In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make your glass more realistic by adding subtle imperfections in Blender. If you take a close look at any beverage in a glass, you'll notice many minor scratches and dents on the surface that usually aren't visible from a distance. In this video, I'll use a wine bottle as an example. In my opinion, those tiny details are what actually make the final material believable. It's important to strike a balance between visual appeal and realism. If you're creating images for clients, it probably wouldn't make sense to add dust and lots of scratches to the surface, as it might not have the polished, commercial look they're expecting. In practice, that means we can vary the intensity of the bumps and normal maps depending on the focal length, the distance from the camera to the object, and just an overall look. First, I'm going to create horizontal scratches on the bottle. I'll use the Principled BSDF shader as a base. I'll decrease the roughness and set a dark color for the base color. I'll also set the transmission value to 1. You can use the glass shader if you want to create clear glass, though it's not that important in this case. Next, I'll add a noise texture node and set the scale to 100. The exact value will depend on the object's size and may vary, so feel free to experiment. I'll also increase the distortion to make the pattern more uneven. Then, let's add a bump node and connect it to our Principled shader. Decrease the strength to around 0.05 or 0.08. Now, I select the noise texture and press Ctrl-T to add mapping nodes. Make sure the Node Wrangler add-on is enabled. Set the coordinate type to object. To squash the noise pattern horizontally, I'll use a vector math node in multiply mode and set the third z value to something like -55 and the rest to 1. At this point, the pattern looks way too dense, so let's fix that with the map range node. I'll set the max value to 0.3. Increasing this value will reveal more of the pattern, and decreasing it will hide more of it. Select all the newly created nodes and press Ctrl-J to create a frame. You can give it a name in the right panel. If you don't see the panel, just press N and set the name in the label field. Let's make the glass even more uneven by adding micro-dents. To do that, I'm going to duplicate the bump node Shift-D and move it out of the current frame using Alt-P. I'll decrease the strength to something like 0.02. Next, I'll add a Voronoi texture node. I'll increase the scale to 2500, though this value may vary depending on your object's size, as I mentioned earlier. The map range node will help shape the pattern. I'll decrease it from min value to 0.08 and from max to 0.3. To preview the output of a specific node, select it and press Ctrl-Shift-left-click. This will connect the selected node to the material output, making it visible in the viewport assuming Node Wrangler is enabled. Now we have two different bump nodes. To make them work together, I simply connect the normal output of the lower node to the normal input of the upper one. I feel like the strength is a bit too high, so I set it to 0.015. You can adjust this at any time, so set it according to your lighting and environment. Create another frame for this group of nodes and give it a name. It's much easier to navigate through the shader editor when you know exactly what you want to adjust without guessing. Keeping everything organized is definitely a good practice. No glass bottle has a perfectly uniform shape. Some areas are slightly thicker or thinner than others. You can often spot this in the reflections or in the gradient transitions. Let's recreate that effect. I'm going to duplicate the bump node again using Shift-D. Then I'll add a noise texture node with a scale of 5 or 6. The pattern should be fairly large to achieve the desired effect. Don't forget to connect the texture coordinate node to the noise texture. As you can see, the highlight on the upper part of the bottle gets subtly distorted. You can adjust both the scale of the noise and the strength of the bump to fine-tune the effect. I also want to add a radial pattern to the bottom part of the bottle. I created a simple texture in Substance Designer. Let me know in the comments if you'd like a tutorial on how to make it. I'm using a second UV map to quickly position the texture. Check out the video in the top right corner to learn more about using additional UV maps in Blender. In just a few minutes, we've built a solid foundation for further adjustments. Remember to use the denoiser carefully to preserve all the fine details. Ideally, for the best results, you can turn off the denoiser completely and set the sample count to 1000 or higher. Feel free to drop any questions in the comments. See you soon.